Hey, welcome back. Last time at the ranch, I left you guys with a little problem. The problem was I had a picture that was 8 by 10. I want to frame it, but I want to mat it. I want to cut the inside of the mat a certain size and then allow 1.5 inches on all four sides. So the question is, what size do I make the picture frame to be? If the picture is 8 by 10 and I want to mat it, I have to allow for that mat. So keeping in mind those sizes, if you look over here, I have to cut the inside of the mat 1/4 inch less than the size of the picture. So if the picture was 8 by 10, I want to cut the inside opening of the mat to be 7.5 inches. 7.5 inches wide, I want it to be 9.5 inches long. So the picture actually is 1/4 inch covering by the inside of the opening of the mat. And keeping in mind that I want 1.5 inches around all four sides, if I add 1.5 inches here, 1.5 inches here, to the 9.5 inches there, I get 3 plus 9.5. My measurement is 12.5 inches for the length. For the width, 7.5 plus 1.5 inches plus 1.5 inches, that's 3 plus the 7.5. The actual size of what I wanted to mat is 10.5 by 12.5. Now, I said to you guys before, with that in mind, I don't really need the picture anymore. All I need is the size that that frame has to be. And for you, this is the measurement that you're gonna make it. Most graduation pictures, I believe, are 8 by 10, some 10 by 14. But if you look at it and you're gonna mat yours, again, you're open to changing the width of the mat board. On mine, as I said, I'm gonna make mine 1.25 inches wide on all four sides. Last time I was on the chop saw, cut 3 pieces off to get my 8 pieces of wood. Today I'm gonna machine them, and as everybody says, this is the fun stuff. So we're gonna take a walk over to the joiner, then we'll take a walk over to the table saw, then we'll take a walk over to the miter saw. So we're gonna be walking a lot. Let's go over to the old jointer to see if we can't square this thing up. And this will give you a sense of completely squaring the board up. Let's take a walk. When we went over our little lesson on the joiner, I said you want to keep in mind a couple of things here. Number one, which way this grain is running. It's clearly running in this direction. Which is the better of the two edges? If I look at this board over here, they both look pretty darn clean. And this one looks, oh, there's a little miss over here where it's surfaced. So I'm going to say that this is probably the better of this edge, better of those two. This one, it doesn't really matter. But this is a great example of moving uphill and downhill when you joint the board. If I choose to joint this board on this edge, on this particular board, you notice that the grain is kind of going this way. This is the uphill side, that is the downhill side. And as I said to you, when you're jointing a board, you always want to try to do it as you joint downhill going along the grain. So I'm going to start right over here. The other thing that I want to do is I want to start my joining process and work my way towards this back end on this particular board. So I'm just going to place it here exactly the way it's going to go. Let me assess this piece of wood here. And I said to you, I want to stay away from that edge because that's my bad edge. This is the better of the two edges. Take a look at this grain. This grain is kind of going this way and kind of drops off here, picks back up over here. I'm going to say I'll probably start over here. So the same way I start over here, I'm going to start over here. By the way, when we identify woods, a lot of times you'll see in cherry and walnut, you'll see lighter areas. That's the fresher wood. That's what's called the spring wood. The darker wood is the heartwood. The spring wood was just formed from the last year or two of a growing season. Eventually, if that tree was old enough, that would turn dark and you'd have lighter rings on the outside. But always remember, on oak, walnut, cherry, you will have contrasting woods that will appear completely white. That's the outside of the tree, and that is the spring wood. So I'm going to start joining here, Let's take a look at this board. Again, this is kind of going downhill. It doesn't matter. Both of these look pretty good. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to choose to joint this edge because this has the spring wood. Not that I don't care for spring wood. I like it. But I'm going to start here and work my way down. So here's the way I position these boards. You think this is going to balance? It's the movie, so it should work out. Start here, start here, start here on all my pieces. Just like we talked about with regular jointing practices, what you guys want to do is you're going to start at the in-feed table, work your way to the out-feed table. I said to you the out-feed table is set the exact height of the highest point of that cutting knife. There's 3 cutting knives, of course. When we do this, we want to take our board, put it up against the fence, keep it down to the table. We want to make sure we put pressure on the back end of the board to make sure pressure is on the back side, never pressure on the in-feed table or the inside. When I'm doing this, I want to joint it how many times? 1, 2, 3. As many times as I need it to be good. Sometimes I can get lucky and join a board 1 time and it's perfect. Other times I might have to do it 3 or 4 times. The one thing I will caution you, if you joint a board and you put any pressure on the outfeed table, if that board starts to angle, you'll never hit the back end of the board. I've had people do this where they've jointed the board 52 times and they've never hit the back end. Because remember, we're gonna listen, I know big ears, you're gonna listen to hear a sound all the way across that entire cutting span. If you hear a noise all the way across, you take a look at that edge, it's nice and clean, you're good to go. So here we go, sleeves rolled up, exposing the massive pipes. Safety glasses on, I'm dressed, I'm all set, ready to go. Let's start to join our boards. Turn the machine on, let it build up to its highest RPMs. I said to you, 4 fingers are gonna hold the stock up against the fence. My thumb is on the top edge. Now my right hand, again, this is all for right-handed people. My right thumb is on the back end of the board if it's comfortable. In this case, it's comfortable. These 4 fingers will be on the top edge. I'm going to concentrate, push it through. When my hand goes over the cutter, I slide it back. Hand goes over the cutter, I slide it back. Both hands now are going to pass across that entire cutting head. I heard a sound all the way across that entire edge. Let me take a look at it. It looks pretty good. Not bad. There's a little bit here that I could it still looks like it's unmachined. I'm gonna probably do it one more time. I mentioned to you that if you do this really fast, you're gonna get ripples. That happens if you get cocky. I know what I'm doing. I've done this before. I'm cool. Look at this, a nice cleaned edge, absolutely perfect. So now I'm going to take this board, bring it over to the table saw where I'm ready to cut. Whoop. This is a good machined edge. Get into the habit. I put an X on that edge and I know that edge is always going to go up against the fence. Oh, you're taking it, cameraman? Thank you, cameraman. I would move on to my second board. I said I want to kind of skid that scarf over there, so I'm going to start it over here and we're going to work our way down. Same thing. On this, it's a little uncomfortable for me to take my right hand, put it all the way in the back. I can put my hands directly on top. When my left hand goes over the cutter, I'm going to slide it, moving it back to my right. My right thumb now will go on the back end of the board, send it all the way through. Didn't sound really strong because I missed that area there. I'm going to go back over, join it a second time. Same exact way. Pressure on the back. Left hand over my right. Right hand over my left. Slide it all the way back. Still sounded like I missed the spot. Right there. There's the spot I missed. So now I'm on 3 times. I probably could have gotten away with 1 on that first one, but you can see how it's definitely different with each board. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. So now I heard it cut, but now I got a little bit of an issue. When I pushed down on this, it really didn't cut anything on the front. It's not good. if I sight down this board, it doesn't look like this edge is really true and straight. So I might have a little damage control here. I'm going to take this board, because I didn't hear it cut there, but I heard it cut here. I'm going to drop that on the top and push that center section through the path of the blade. Because I think that if I kept on going, I'd probably miss that front end. What that did was it took this section out. I'm going to see if I can't put pressure on here and hear a sound all the way across on this path. That sounds good. Still sounds good. Still sounds good. Still sounds good. I heard a nice true sound all the way across. If I look down that edge, I have a nice true edge. I wanted to show you that because that happens a lot of times where people will start joining, they won't put consistent pressure on there, there'll be a gap somewhere, you keep joining and it will start to go at an angle. No good. After you do it 3 passes and it doesn't really look any better or make a consistent sound all the way across the entire edge, get your instructor and they'll tell you what to do. X on this edge. Cameraman, let's see if you can put it on the table saw without dinking it this time. Last board is this edge. I'm going downhill, same exact way. Pressure down. I hear a sound. Over and back of my right. Don't hear a whole much of a sound. So there was my cut, true. I heard the sound in the beginning. I didn't hear it here, but I heard it at the very end. Maybe I can get lucky if I put pressure down on this backside and really push down. Oh, I hear it. I hear a nice sound. Lot of pressure. Grit my teeth. Lot of push-ups. Remember that right thumb is all the way up. I heard a consistent sound all the way across that entire edge. I don't know if it's because I went to church on Sunday or I just did it really well, but that edge came up nice. So now what I'm going to do is put an X on this edge. I'm all set. I'm ready to rip these to width on the table saw. Let's take a walk. I always say to the people in my class, there's what do I say to them in my class? It's not by coincidence that you have the joiner 3 feet away from the table saw and the chop saw all the way 25 feet away from both. You're supposed to go from that machine, the jointer, over to the table saw where you rip the board to width. And that's exactly what I'm going to do here. Remember when I was figuring out my boards, I said to you, when I drew this little line, I took the number 6, I divided this 4 1/4 by 6, and I got about 1 5/8 inch 3/8. I'm going to set my boards to be 1 1/4 wide. Hopefully I can get 3 1/4 inch width pieces out of each one of these boards. And if I can do that, I'll get 9 pieces, enough to make my 2 frames. To do this, I'm going to set up the table saw. I mentioned to you before, the table saw has a fence, which means it's supposed to cut straight. I'm going to take the jointed edge, put that X edge up against the fence, set the fence to the width I want it to be, and also set the height. To do this, I'm going to take the board, which is in place, move it out, again, so you characters can see how I'm cutting. The first thing that I always do is raise it to the correct blade height. People set the fence and then they have to move the fence over because they can't see if the blade is above the surface of their stock. I'm going to take my board, lay it down. Remember, it's the crank wheel directly in front of you. I'm going to move it in what direction to go up? Lefty loop. No, he said forget about that. Clockwise up, counterclockwise down. I'm going to move this bad boy clockwise, and I raise the blade about 1/8 to 1/16 of an inch above the work surface. So I can see that without touching that tooth, it's about 1/8 to 1/16 of an inch above the work surface. The next thing I said to you, Set the fence to the width it has to be, so it's blade height first, width second. Maybe that's a question that should be asked. When I'm cutting on the table saw for any cut, what's the first adjustment that I make? It's going to be blade height. What's the second adjustment? It's going to be fence. Blade height, fence will save you a little bit of time. I said to you I'm going to set the fence to 1.25 inches. So I'm going to take a walk over here. Again, I have that Biesmeyer fence. I have my sight glass right here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to loosen up my black knob. I'll slide the fence over until I get to 1.25 inches. Remember, 0 to 12 on this. Is he going to get it? Is he going to get it? How am I going to get it? Can't see it. 62 years old. Bifocals. I take my bifocals out. Now I can see this. So I'm going to set the fence to 1.25 inches. Err on the side of being a little bit less because I got to make sure that I get 3 pieces out of here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to lock the fence down. I'm all set to make my cut. I don't need my 2 glasses to make my cut, so I'll take those off. This is fancy footwork by the cameraman. The cameraman's doing this, cameraman's doing this, you know what I'm saying? Not bad. I'm going to make this 1.25 inch cut on all 3 of these pieces. The one I'm worried about is this over here, hoping that I can get 3 pieces out of it. So I'll make this cut first. If it doesn't work out, I'll show you how you can make a little adjustment. Let's say it doesn't work out. Let's say I don't get 3 pieces out of this. I can move the fence in a little bit, and instead of making my board 1.25 inches wide for the my picture frame, I can make it 1 1/8 inches, 1 1/16 inches. I can move it in. The important thing is I want to get 3 pieces out of this because I don't want to waste any stock. With my board in place, holding it, what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over here, I'm going to turn the machine on, which will start the blade. Then, of course, I have a choice. Do I use a push block? Do I use a push stick? Because this is a long board, I want to put pressure down, I'm going to choose to use the push block. Never hands because I can't get my hand in there that safely. I'm going to say safely. If it's you, you're never making this cut by yourself. At this point, you go, hey, teacher! And that's me. I'll come walking over. I'll be on the back side of the saw to grab your board and talk you through it. So with my board in place, I'll make my cut. Now with my left hand always, hold the stock up against the fence. My right thumb is on the back end of the board and I'm going to start to push this through. My left hand stays as I push it underneath my left hand. Keep the board moving. Watch what I do. Take my left, I put it back there. Right hand on the push block. My left hand, I'm going to drop it and I'm going to push it all the way through. The question is, why did he keep the board moving? Why didn't he just stop? I noticed that the board tends to burn less if you could keep it moving. Now, I do have a little burn mark there. It's not that big of a deal. But what I want to try to do is minimize what I have here in terms of burning my board. If you look at this board, there is a burn mark on the back side. So the question is, how do I get those burn marks out? A lot of people will tell me sand them out. If I sand them out, it's just a lot of time. Is there a quicker way that I could get that burn mark out? I could. If I take a walk over to that jointer, I could joint this board maybe one time, and then I'll always have a clean edge to work with. Take a look. Watch what I do beforehand. Here's my finished cut piece that was 1.25 inches wide. What I'm going to do is I'm going to see if I can easily get 2 pieces out of there. I could. So I have enough that if I joint this board one time or even 2 times, it'll probably clean up enough where I can cut another piece out of that. So what I'm going to do, instead of cutting or jointing this board and then coming back here, I'm going to cut my other pieces. I'll try to work smarter. I'll cut this board, probably the same thing's going to happen here. Same thing happens to the third, then I joint those 3 boards, I'll make another cut. Take this, I'm going to move this off to the side. Now with my left hand, right thumb on the back end of the board, cut it the same exact way as I cut my other piece. My left hand goes here, push stop, left hand, drop it, and I'm going to push the board all the way through. So there's my second cut. Take a look at this here. There's a couple of burn marks. And now we'll move on to my third piece. Same exact way. Now with my left hand, notice my body is off to the left-hand side. Critical that you don't stand directly in the back because of the dangers of sit-up. I'll move my left hand back, hand on the foot drop, and go all the way through. So here are my three pieces, my two long ones, and I do have a short one. And these are my edges. There's a lot of burn marks on this one. Again, this blade is also probably in need of a little changing. And the other thing that's important with this is, as I send it through, I want to be consistent with my speed. I'm going to go back to the joiner. I'm going to joint these three pieces. I'll do it the same way as I did it before. Examine it. That looks pretty good. My right thumb is on the back end of the board. No more burn marks. Pencil. X. Cameraman. Thank you. Let's go this way. I'm hearing a sound. Sounds a little chippy, so I'll go slower. You hear that kind of chippy sound? Sometimes that indicates you're going uphill into the grain. That came out pretty clean. It sounded a little chippy. I don't think I'm going to joint it again. Last board. So I want to go in this direction here. Same way. Yeah, that sounds better. Those were three easy boards to join. Go back to the table saw. And remember, no one cut after I made my cut here, so the fence is still set. I'll finish 3 more cuts. Hold on to your board. Blade is exposed so that you can see exactly where that saw blade is cutting. Now with my left hand, start to push. I'm going to hold it, push block, and through. Jointed edge. Hold it with my left, push block, and then all the way through. Jointed edge. L. Ellie. Hold it with my left, push block all the way through. I now have 4 pieces for my 2 lengths. I have 2 for my width. I need 2 more short pieces out of these 3 boards. Again, I have the same issue with the burn marks. I'm going to take the short piece. I'm definitely going to joint that one. I'm going to take the better of the 2. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to take this piece because I feel sorry for it. Nobody will use this piece, I don't think. So what I'm going to do is I'll make this cut, and we'll have this, hopefully, as my 2 pieces. Maybe somebody you can use this for a cutting board or a frame of their own. I'll go back to the joiner. There might be a little bit of an issue here. I have 2 narrow pieces. If I'm joining a narrow piece, I put my thumb there, and I send it all the way across. My friends are going to call me 9.5 or stubby, because you know this is going to happen. If I am joining a board that's narrow, let me think. a safe way to do it, I come over here. I'm going to pull out the push block. I like the push block better than the push stick. Do it the same way I'm working on the table saw. Take the better of the two edges, which happen to be the machine cut edge. I'll bring it over to the joiner, start it up. My left hand holds the stock up against the fence and down to the table. I'm going to use the push block this time and I'm going to send it through. I'm going to slide my left hand back, slide my left hand back. So safely as I go across here, this is now a burn-free edge. Same thing, always get to the habit, I put an X on that. Last one, cameraman. Going downhill, I'll start from here, same exact way. If I put the push block here, it might be a little uncomfortable, but it's still better than me holding on. So I'll keep my left hand here, right hand here, and I'm going to slide my left hand back to make sure that it stays down on the table and up against the fence. The thing that I want you to know is I've been doing this for 40 years, actually well over 40 years. But every time I jointed this, I didn't go any faster than I did the first time. It's consistency. It's doing it the right way. It's understanding that you get 10 of these, you get 4 eyes. Well, if you wear 2 pair of glasses, you get 4 eyes. 10 toes, you want to keep everything. The most important thing with everything that you do here is your safety. It's not worth anything if it costs you a thumb, if it costs you an eye, if it costs you a toe. So always make sure that you understand safety above everything else. I'm going to go back to the table saw, make my 2 cuts on this, and then I can figure out my rabbet. My last 2 cuts, jointed edge up against the fence. Nobody came over here, touched it. I'll make 2 more cuts. Now with my left hand, push block on it. Send it all the way through. Drop it. I'm going to send it all the way through. So there's my 3rd piece. And this will be my 4th piece. Remember that little spark point? We'll see if we can clean that up. I hold it down with my left hand like I mean it. Hold it with my left. Now I'll grab my push block. I'm going to send it in. All the way, all the way, all the way, all the way. Here's my waste from those pieces. This was the waste from the overall project, which isn't bad because like I said, if I wanted to, I can maybe make another frame or a cutting board out of this. You guys are going to be critical to me. You're going to say these 3 pieces worked out great. You're going to say these 4 pieces worked out great. The bone of contention is right here. If you notice, there's that part that didn't surface. Can I work with this? Again, the thinking is the hard part because remember, I have to put a picture, I have to put a mat board, I have to put a piece of glass, I have to put a piece of backing on this whole frame. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to cut a section out. I'm going to create a rabbet joint, and everybody should know a rabbet joint. My rabbet joint is going to be about maybe 5/16 in or 1/4 of an inch in from a surface. It's going to go up maybe about 3/8 of it, let's say a 1/2 inch. I'm going to cut this section out, which will create the area for my mat, my frame, and my glass to sit in. I'm an idiot if I put this bad section on the outside. But if I mark it and make this cut over here, I'm actually going to get rid of that piece. So again, you're thinking. And I know the last thing that you guys want to do is think. I'm going to leave it at this point. I'm going to show you guys how to set up to make a rabbet cut on these pieces. After I make the rabbet cut, then the next thing I'm going to do is we'll mark out and cut our miters on the chop saw. Clean up the inside and then maybe then we'll It's the first take. You know, I don't get a second chance. then maybe we'll glue the whole thing together. But we'll come back, we'll cut the rabbit in a little bit. Hope you guys have a great day. See you back for rabbit time.